Hello, everyone.
Hey.
Gluten I make.
Yeah.
Where's yogurt?
I don't know. Something about a bake sale. Asked me to come in today.
Okay. Well, in this video, we're going to do something a little different. Most of the videos I've done so far have been video tours, which are exactly what they sound like. But in this video, we have here both of the TNG jumpsuits we've looked at in the previous couple videos, and we're going to talk about some of the ways they're similar and some of the ways they're different.
That one's yellow, and that one's orange. We're done here.
There's actually quite a bit more to it than that.
Well, I may have to leave early. If I get bored.
No, I'm paying you to be my assistant.
Take all the time you need.
I will. Thanks. I want to thank the owner of these two costumes, Angelo Cafaldi, for letting us examine them together and make this video for you. I also want to thank my coffee supporters.
Thanks.
If you want to learn more about the TNG jumpsuits, I've written an actual costume analysis, which you can read on my blog, www.startrekcostumeguide.com.
For a small fee.
Nope. It's free.
Send me an offer.
Don't do that. So you're probably already familiar with most of the obvious changes in terms of style between the early TNG jumpsuits and the later ones. Specifically, the early jumpsuits had division color trim along the neckline and yoke, whereas in the later seasons that trim was removed and this Mandarin-style collar was added with the division color piping along the edge of the collar. The detailing at the bottom of the pant legs was also different too. But probably the most surprising difference is the color. I mean, just look at these two jumpsuits alone. This is Tasha's, from season 1, and look how orange it is compared to Ensign Sito's from season 7. And even more surprising is that this is actually the opposite of what you might expect just watching the show, because in season 1, the uniforms often looked like this kind of greenish gold color, but in season 7, they looked warmer, like a warmer kind of slightly orangey gold. But in person, it's the exact opposite of what you might expect. Not to mention that Tasha's uniform actually has two different colors between the body and the sleeves being a different color than the body itself, and neither of these colors is even remotely close to this jumpsuit from season 7. So it's interesting how much the color changed over the years, but also how much it changed in terms of how it looked in the show because of how the show was lit and any color editing that was done in post-production. One of the less obvious but very important differences between these jumpsuits is the direction in which the stretch of the spandex was cut. Most of the jumpsuits, especially the early ones, were cut with the stretch going up and down vertically instead of around the wearer's body, which, as I've said before, makes no sense. I have no idea why that was done. But the later jumpsuits were cut with the stretch going horizontally around the wearer's body, like you might expect, skin-tight spandex jumpsuits to be cut. Again, I have no idea why the early ones were cut with the stretch going in that direction, but it's no wonder that the actors hated them and complained that they were so horribly uncomfortable. I mean, with it stretching around you, it's nice to know that they weren't always horribly uncomfortable to wear. But with this uniform being from season 7, we really don't know at what point this became a thing. It seems to be something that Robert Blackman and his team figured out, or somebody figured out anyway. But at least later in the show, the actors got to be a little more comfortable with the spandex wrapping around their body. There's also the stylistic difference between the front zipping and back zipping jumpsuits. The early ones all zipped up the front, and the later styles, some zipped up the front and some zipped up the back. There didn't seem to be much rhyme or reason to it. You can read more about that on my blog in the costume analysis. But the later styles, in my opinion, generally look better when they zipped up the back. It was a cleaner look in the front. You had these hook and eye closures on the collar. And then they zipped open down the center back. Whereas the early ones, had the hook and eye closures right there on the front of the yoke because there was no collar. And then they zipped up the front like that. These are more convenient because you can at least, zip and close yourself up, whereas with these, it's definitely more convenient to have someone else help you with it, at least for men. Women might be more used to, zipping themselves up the back, but it's not something that men often have to do. So it's less convenient, but it's a cleaner look to zip up the back. One of the more subtle differences between these jumpsuits is the curve along the lower yoke. It might not look like it, but on Tasha's jumpsuit, there's actually a gentle curve all the way from the center front consistently outward toward the corner of the yoke at the sleeve. But on Ensign Sito's uniform, there's much less of a curve. From the center front out to here is almost a straight line, and then there's a bit of curve out to the corner of the sleeve. Same thing across the back. The back yoke on Tasha's is a consistent curve all the way from the corner of one sleeve, kind of this upside down U shape, and then back down to the corner of the other sleeve. So starting at the center back, there's this consistent curve all the way to the corner of the yoke on the outside of the sleeve. But on Ensign Sito's uniform, it's mostly straight across the upper back body right here, and then it curves out toward the corner of the sleeve. There are some interesting differences on the inside of the jumpsuits too. For example, the bust darts were handled different ways on these. Zoom in. So you can see on Tasha's, the dart was sewn closed and pressed downward, then sewn into the seam in that direction too. Whereas Ensign Sito's uniform has the bust dart sewn, then slashed down the center, pressed open, and then sewn open into that side front seam. So you can see they were done two different ways. But actually on Ensign Sito's uniform, this one was a little different. I think it was supposed to look like that one. You can see it was slashed and pressed, but then I think that the dart accidentally got sewn into the seam in that direction. Oops. So it was just slashed real quick and then opened as much as possible. Another interesting difference is how the corners of those asymmetrical wedge shapes were handled on the front and back of the jumpsuits. On Tasha's, there are these threads. There are thread tails that were left and then tied to hold these seam allowances together and keep them from separating too much. And on Ensign Sito's, this area right here was actually stabilized with a lightweight fusible interfacing. We definitely saw some pinches right there on some of the uniforms, most notably Dr. Crusher's in Season 6. One weird pair of differences between these jumpsuits is how the pant legs and the sleeves were hemmed. On Tasha's jumpsuit, on the pant legs, there was actually a separate sewn-on hem facing. So you see this hem fabric right here was cut separately and then sewn on. Whereas her sleeves were just turned up and hemmed. It's just one piece. But then the exact opposite was the case with Ensign Sito's uniform. On the pant legs, the hem was just turned up and stitched. But then on the sleeves, there was a separate hem facing. You can see the seam there right at the bottom of the sleeve. So I think this is probably a sizing issue, not any kind of a construction standard. It's always ideal to have less bulk in a hem, and can't really have less bulk than 2 layers. So you just turn up the hem and stitch it. But if there's not enough fabric to work with, then you have to add that extra hem facing, which causes a little bit of bulk right along the fold line or seam line. But you're able to hem your sleeve or your pant leg, so...
All magic comes with a price.
Another interesting difference is the actual hem stitching. On Tasha's, the sleeve is hemmed with a catch stitch, which is what you'd normally expect to see, what I've seen on pretty much every costume I've examined now. Same with the pant leg. And Sito's pant legs were also hemmed with a catch stitch. But for some reason, Ensign Sito's sleeves were not hemmed with a catch stitch. They were hemmed with more of a conventional hem stitch. You can see the little little pricks around the sleeve. I don't know why. Probably the most subtle difference between these jumpsuits is the manner in which the elastic stirrups were fastened to the bottom of the pant legs. On Tasha's, it was fastened with a little triangle of stitching, whereas on Ensign Sito's, it was a box or a square shape.
Is that all?
I guess so.
We'll call that an hour.
No, we won't. Is there anything you'd like to add?
Maybe. What do you think they're interested in?
Star Trek costumes? TNG jumpsuits? Like the two we just looked at?
Oh, I guess that makes sense.
Yep. Anything you want to add about those?
This will be a silent auction.
Okay, we're done.
Well, this was a waste.
If you enjoyed this video, if you found it interesting or helpful and would like to see more like it, please support my costume research on Ko-fi. Thanks for watching, and remember to subscribe to this channel for more costume videos and sewing tutorials.
And free shit, apparently. Hey, Alan.
It's Alex.
Doesn't matter. I'm gonna let you in on a professional secret here. In order to make money, you have to charge money.
It's not always true.
Or steal it. You're right.